Today I'm in Speyside and I'm going to be cycling to 5 distilleries. Yeah. Oh, and I'm going to be wearing tights while doing it. So I'm up in Speyside for 2 reasons. Firstly, I had to do a first aid course yesterday, and then secondly, I thought I'd come up to my house CopperBroc here and stay overnight. I had a few things to do up here, and I thought, you know what, why not make a whiskey adventure out of this today? So I'm going to jump on the mountain bikes that we keep here and take you guys around those 5 distilleries for a really quick tour. Let's do it. So hopefully you guys might like my outfit today. I'm going for the geeky security guard look. That'd be pretty cool. One of the reasons I selected CopperBroc for its location is it's literally in the heart of Speyside. I've been cycling for a minute and this is our first distillery we're at already, which is Dailuaine. Dailuaine has a really nice tie-in with CopperBroc because CopperBroc was built as an excise officer's house back in 1900. So Dailuaine has a couple of claims to fame. Firstly, it was the first ever distillery to get a pagoda put on it. Mitch, what's a pagoda? It was originally designed by a gentleman called Charles Doig back in the day when every single distillery was malting its own barley and therefore it had a kiln. So what he did was he designed this Chinese inspired looking top to sit on the kiln. And what it did was it effectively drew air down into the kiln but also circulated the smoke in an effective way out of it. Charles Doig's design was picked up by 58 other distilleries, but Dailuaine was the first distillery to install it. Unfortunately, it burnt down in 1918, so we can no longer see it. So the pagoda is still used today by a lot of modern distilleries, even though it's put there basically as an ornament more than a functioning tool, because most distilleries nowadays do not have their own maltings. Let's talk about the Speyside Way, which I'm going to be cycling on today. It's actually the old Strathspey Railway that was built in 1863. Basically, its main purpose was to service all these distilleries along the way. What the distilleries had was little steam trains called pugs that came down from the distillery that joined the connecting lines. And these pugs would carry the casks from the distilleries. They would then be shipped off down to the central belt and then distributed all around the world. The Speyside Way, as it's now called, is now a 66-mile track that stretches all the way from Aviemore up to Buckie. I mean, 66 miles on a trail without seeing a single car. So I came down to the River Spey and managed to find some fellow paddleboarders. This is Joyce, who's just been paddling down the Spey. Good time?
Excellent. So fast, lots of fun.
How many times you fall in?
Just once.
Alright, nice little catch up there with some fellow paddleboarders that were going down the river. So that was cool to see them. So this is the River Spey, so I'm going to talk Speyside for a minute here. Speyside, the whiskey making region, gets its name from this river. This is the second longest river in Scotland, well over 100 miles. Speyside, largest region in Scotland for whiskey making. When we talk about the big names, they're all based up here. Macallan, Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, Balvenie. 60% of our single malt distilling is made in this small area of Scotland. Why do we have so many distilleries up here? 3 reasons. First reason, water source. Most distilleries do not take their water from the River Spey, but there's amazing water sources all around this area. Streams, boreholes, burns. And one of the things that is essential for making good whiskey is a good, clean, efficient water source. It's not going to add too much to the characteristic, but you do need a lot of water to make your whiskey. Second reason, this area around here, as you can see looking about right now, it's got loads of little what we like to say nooks and crannies in Scotland, so loads of great hiding places. So if you're setting up your distillery back in the day and you wanted to do it illegally, which was rife around about here, this was an easy place to do it. You weren't going to get caught. Third reason, it's actually quite a temperate climate, as you can see today, blue sky in Scotland. When distillers were setting up, they could grow their barley very easily. I wouldn't do a whiskey tasting in it. That'd be stupid. Hopefully there's not a dead sheep up there somewhere. Looks like on the way down to the river, managed to get a puncture. Great thing about the Speyside Way is they have these bike repair stations, so I can just plug it in, pump it up, good to go. Fixed my bike in the bike station repair, and it made me think, like, if you're in a big city, you'd never have a repair station like that, right? I mean, it had tools on it, you know, you could fix your bike, you could pump it up. A simple example of how life is here and how people just don't go around stealing stuff. There is that trust that exists here. To give you another example, this phone box right here. Check this out. So, in it, we have a variety of drinks and snacks. Pick and mix. There's some hula hoops there. It's like an honesty telephone box. It is absolutely stunning around here. I mean, right now, not really doing it justice, right? It's we're in December. Everything's a little bit deed, as we say in Scotland. But man, come here in the summer, the colours you get, it is absolutely stunning. Beautiful part of the world. You know, even if you're not a whiskey fan, highly recommend coming up to Speyside. Just checking it out. Beautiful mountains to go and explore. Hiking everywhere. Sheep. If you're into sheep, always a good thing. Maybe you shouldn't be saying that as a Scotsman. No. So I've arrived at the Dalmunich distillery, which isn't this. This is part of the old imperial distillery that stood here for 100 years. It was mothballed in 1998. And the site is now home to a different distillery. Man, isn't she an absolute beauty? I mean, look at that. That is a stunning distillery. I don't know, that's, for me, that's like whiskey porn. Is that sad? Am I sad for saying that? I don't know. But anyway, what you're looking at right now, I'm going to send the drone up in a second so you can have a look at it properly. This is the still house. Dalmunich is owned by Pernod Ricard, who built this distillery back in 2015. The only liquid that I've actually seen as a single malt bottling right now is available at the Glenlivet store, where they have a Dalmunich that was from 2015 that you can buy. Aside from that, all this liquid, or most of this liquid, the 10 million litres that is made from Dalmunich, will be going into Pernod Ricard's blends. Alright, that's Dalmunich done. Off to Knockando. Sun has come out. Yes. Beautiful Speyside Way. Still cold as balls. So I want to talk about my hat for a minute. Got a new hat. Story behind the hat. Found these guys on YouTube, Craig and Amy. They're called Kinging It, and they're basically going around Scotland in a camper van. They have been for the last 4 months, I think. Guys, get yourself into a bit of Kinging It. Absolutely hilarious. Way funnier than I'm ever going to be. That's for sure. So the Welsh accent is one of the only accents I can kind of do a little bit of. I was absolutely gutted. Craig and Amy, if you're watching, I'm really sorry. It's probably terrible. So this is Knockando. Knockando Diageo owned distillery. Big thing about Knockando is it's used a lot for J&B, one of Diageo's big blends, and actually one of the biggest blends in the world. So quite a small distillery with regards to production. It puts out just over 1 million litres. Still a lot of juice. In terms of what the other distilleries do around this area, then it's quite small in comparison. You can see behind me this kind of arm. So what used to happen back in the day, talking about the Speyside Way, which ran along here, this used to pick up all the casks and put all the casks onto the train as it's passing. The realization that it's actually only 4 distilleries within 5 miles has just kicked in. Stupid Mitch. Tamdhu! This is one of these distilleries that have been open and closed a lot within its life. It was actually mothballed as recently as 2010, but taken back over again by Ian McLeod Distillers. So they've really kind of breathed a lot of life into this distillery, and fantastic to see. One of the few distilleries in Speyside that has its own cooperage still. So you can see right now, I'm surrounded by quite a few casks. Sherry casks using either Quercus alba or Quercus roba. Quercus roba being European wood, Quercus alba being American wood. The big difference with a sherry butt is the size of it. You can see here, all these are sherry casks, and then little bourbon barrels. So literally half the size when we're talking about bourbon barrels. Also, half the price. So a sherry butt right now, a good sherry butt, is going to run you about up to about £900–1,000, whereas a bourbon cask is going to be closer to about 160, 170. What it's going to give to the flavour of the whiskey is massive. So we talk about whiskies having a huge influence from the cask. Around about 60 to 70% of its flavour, what you experience, comes from these little bad boys right here. Sherry butts, they're going to give you more of this tannic note, rich fruits, chocolate, raisins, sultanas. That's really what's going to punch through. Whereas American wood, these smaller bourbon barrels, they're going to be charred on the inside. They're going to give you more of this characteristic that relates to citrus, vanilla, a lot lighter, not as big a mouthfeel. My personal favourite is whiskey that's been aged in American wood. So one of the many great things about Tamdhu as a distillery is that they've kept the old railway station here and kind of turned it into a little feature of the distillery, which is really cool. They got little bits like this where you can just hang out. Oh, I just burped and it smelled of whiskey. How's that? I haven't had any whiskey today. So on my way back to CopperBroc now. Love doing this ride. Great cycle. May need a shower after all that. So I made it back to CopperBroc. Thought I'd change into something a little bit more festive and a little bit more comfortable. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that episode. If you did, do me a favour, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Slán Jová.